all go to the moon, shall we? So I wanted to start out by a tip of the hat to the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. In I believe it was 1990-something, astronaut Jim Weatherby was contacted by Major Barrett Roddenberry and asked, can we fly Gene's cremated remains on the space shuttle? And NASA said, well, we don't have an official policy. What a surprise. But each astronaut has a personal effects kit. So you may fly Mr. Roddenberry's ashes in space. In that way, NASA opened the frontier for us to follow. Later, when the Pluto Express, a NASA mission, was being launched, the principal investigator for that mission contacted Clyde Tombaugh, the discoverer of Pluto's relatives, and convinced them to give him some of Clyde Tombaugh's cremated remains to fly on Pluto Express, which, as the name implies, went past Pluto. Today we know that as our Voyager service. The first one we now know as our Earth orbital system. In 1998, I was approached by a friend of mine who was the NASA who was the chief of staff at NASA, and said, hey, Charlie, the students of Dr. Eugene Shoemaker, famous discoverer of Comet Shoemaker-Levy, as well as the person that helped teach astronauts what rocks to look for on the surface of the moon, approached me and said, those students would like to honor Dr. Shoemaker by flying some of his ashes on the moon. NASA doesn't have a policy. Could you help us out? And I said, of course, we'd be delighted to do that. And I had one caveat. I said, well, I want to establish the right of commercial companies to fly stuff to the moon. And so I'm going to charge the students to do this. Now, the good news is they didn't have to pay what you ought to pay. I said, I will fly as a precursor mission if they'll just pay me for the capsule. It wasn't about the money, it was about creating commercial access to the lunar surface. So in 1998 and 99, the Lunar Prospector was launched, orbited the moon, and then deliberately impacted on the south pole of the moon as part of a science experiment that NASA conducted to look for water on the moon. The idea was if we can impact, we can hit ice, the ice will come up and we'll look at it as a spectrum. We didn't know there was ice on the south pole of the moon. So again, Dr. Shoemaker was a cutting edge scientist. My point is that we follow in NASA's footsteps. NASA established each of our services, although they haven't done the Earthrise that I'm aware of, and established it as appropriate, just like scattering some hero's ashes on the sea is appropriate. So here we are, a few years later, we're about to conduct our second lunar mission. We contracted with private company Astrobotic. We went through the regulatory process to get approved to do that. And sitting out on the launch pad today are 70 folks ready to go to the moon, including all of you all's loved ones, and two people that I want to call out. I always have difficult times when I talk about any particular person because everybody is a story, everyone is important. We embrace all of our clients. Some of them are a little bit more well-known than others, but that doesn't mean that we do anything different. We send them aboard. But there are two people on Tranquility that I want to mention. One is a personal hero of mine, Sir Arthur C. Clarke, who I had the there you go. Had the privilege of meeting in Vienna, Austria in 1982, and he donated his DNA to send to deep space the lunar surface. The other is an amazing woman, Moretta West, who was NASA's first woman astrogeologist in the 1960s. Think about that. A woman in a position of important science at NASA in the 1960s. Moretta West charted the surface of the moon and also helped the Apollo astronauts figure out what to look for when they were on the surface of the moon. Now we have a bunch of other folks on this flight, but I wanted to make 2 points. One is NASA leads, opens the door for commercial activities, just like when I was in the rocketry business in the 1980s. NASA was leading, there were no commercial launches available. We literally, when we launched Conestoga in 1982, I had to go to 11 separate government agencies to get approval. I had to get a gun dealer's license. I had to get an export license. There were so many different ways because no one had contemplated commercial launch activities at that point in time. It was science fiction. What do these Texans want to do launching a missile from an island they own in Texas? Actually, our island was only 2 islands up from Boca Chica. But we had to go through an intense amount of effort just to get approval for private companies to launch rockets into space. That then ultimately led to the 1982 Commercial Launch Act, which we helped author. And today, that entire regulatory structure is why we have Elon, why we have Mr. Bezos, why we have Sir Richard, and why we have Vulcan sitting on the pad, not a government mission, a commercial mission. So the point is not, oh, Charlie, you had a hard time. We did, but rather the process of moving from government-only missions, where we're only serving government requirements, to opening up for commercial missions. And as long as commercial missions are safe, compliant with foreign policy, and don't threaten our national security, we have the right in this country to launch missions into space. We're unique in that. There aren't really commercial programs anywhere but here in this country. It's very special. It's been a 30-year struggle in some ways to make it happen, but you all are the result and the leading edge of commercial lunar exploration. Sure, I put the first commercial package on the moon in 1999, but now we have an amazing mission called Tranquility, and we're just very thrilled to be able to have you guys here and to open the memorial service for the Tranquility flight. I get to name all our missions. Tranquility was easy. Look up at the moon. My goodness, what a tranquil place to have a memorial. And sure, we have all kinds of memorials on Earth, but as we take our civilization out to the moon and then to Mars, as I said earlier, we're going to take all of our memorials and celebrations with us. And we're proud as Celestis to again lead the world, gets old sometimes, in pioneering commercial missions to the moon. Couldn't have done it without you guys. And as I said before, and you'll probably hear me say it 2 or 3 more times over the weekend, couldn't do it without you. So let's move on and celebrate the launch of Tranquility. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Colby Youngblood. I'm the president of Celestis Memorial Space Flights, and if I haven't met you yet, please come find me either at the launch site in the foyer. One of the great aspects of my job is getting to meet you all in person, so looking forward to that if I haven't already met you. So one of the great things that I get to do is during our memorial services, I get to bring our families up front so that they can speak about their loved one. And we're going to begin that process now. So the way the process works is I will call up a family and make your way up. I'll call the first family and they can make their way up. And that family is going to be the family of Christopher Anderson. And when I'll call a family up, I'll tell the next family, I'll give you guys a heads up, and then you guys can start making your way up to the stage, and we'll just keep rolling just like that, keep everything moving smooth. Okay, so with that, we've got Christopher Anderson's family and Henry Gomez Reyes. That family will be next. All right, come on up.
My name is Sarah Anderson, and I am Christopher Anderson's sister. I decided to write a letter to him, to my big brother, Christopher. It's been 10 years without you, 10 years since I've seen your smile or heard your laugh. The saddest thing is that I can't even really remember what your laugh sounds like anymore. But then I remember all of our wonderful memories, and it's impossible not to smile. The 20 years I did have with you were full of so much laughter. From playing astronauts using laundry baskets to building forts using every blanket in the house, there was never a dull moment during our childhood. You had a passion for life that was contagious. From skydiving with Mom on your 18th birthday to learning how to fly helicopters, your adventurous spirit encouraged all of us to be fearless. But let's not forget that despite having perfect hair and a daring personality, you were the biggest goober of all time. You never took yourself too seriously and never hesitated to burst out in your Jim Carrey impression. Our relationship was one that people envied. It didn't matter that we were almost 4 years apart, we were best friends. I know that your biggest fear was letting me down. But I want you to know that you've always been enough, and I'm honored to call myself your sister. As I get older, it gets even harder. I wish I could call you after work to tell you about my day. I wish you could be there to see me get married. I wish you could be an uncle to my children. And I wish we would be able to grow old together. You were a man of science. You had a passion for learning about how the world worked and a brain that allowed you to fully understand it. Half of the topics that you talked about went right over my head. Black holes, parallel universes, you were fascinated by the world beyond us. What I would do now to sit back and simply listen to you. One thing you always said was that energy is neither created nor destroyed. I never truly understood the meaning of that until 10 years ago. How could your energy just disappear? It couldn't. It's not possible. I feel your energy around me. I see you in every sunset. I hear you singing along with me to every great song. And I smile every time I bite into a perfectly seasoned New York strip, your favorite. The reality of you being gone still knocks the wind out of me. But I know the grief is overwhelming because the love is so strong. After all, love is the most powerful force in the universe. So now, Christopher, we get to send you on an adventure to a place you always wanted to go. Whenever we miss you, all we have to do is look up at the moon. Just a reminder that you are not gone. You are still here with us. Godspeed, my brother. I love you to the moon and back.
The family for Henry Gomez Reyes, followed by the family of Indica Noodle Fabiano.
Okay. Hi. The truth, I'm not very good like talking in public, but I hope I could do it good. Well, the first thing I want to say is that since my brother passed away, like talking about all these things really like make our heart like shrink. I don't know how to explain it. Even coming here in the way I didn't know like how it will be, because it's like coming back the time for the day of this situation. My brother was pilot, as you all can see. He was like really like adventures. He like loved the heroes and and all like this, like Star Wars, all these things. So, well, I think he gave us a really, really good chance to remember him, not only because of being my brother. We remember him in everything because of being pilot, like we see in the sky, even airplane pass, even when we're in the airport, we see like the pilots coming and we just bring him back to our mind. And so, like we as family are really thankful with Celestis because he, like before, as I told you, we remember him almost everywhere. But now we really have the chance to see him completely everywhere because, like, he's going to the moon. So it's like we're going to be able to see him anywhere, any place in the world. Even, for example, my dad and his wife right now, like, they're not able to be here. But, like, I know anywhere they will be just thinking on him, just looking to the sky, seeing the moon. And we all can be, like, kind of like connected with him as a full now, like. So, yeah, basically, like, I just want to say, like, now, we always bother him because he was, like, with Buzz Lightyear, he loved it. So now he can go to the stars, to the moon, like, and beyond. And I just want to say that. And we love you. And I'm sure he will be so happy with all this we're doing, not only for us, but because of him. Yeah.
The family for Indica Noodle Fabiano, followed by the family for Kenneth Hogan.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, so there's a dog on the flight. She was my service dog. I got her when I came home from the military, and she probably saved my life. So she was a one-of-a-kind dog. She was known throughout the country. So when she passed, it didn't just hit me, it hit a bunch of people. And some of my friends helped me come up with this idea. And thank you to Celestis for this amazing opportunity. But she's going to be up there, and she's going to be with all your family members, and all your family members have a good doggy to be with and have company with. So thank you, everyone.
The family for Kenneth Hogan, followed by the family for Liam Anand.
So my name's Patrick, and Ken was my father. So a number of my family members helped me to put together a biography that's on the website, but I thought I'd share that with folks here today. Ken is remembered by those who know him for his humor, his wit, and his kindness. He chose pharmacy as his vocation and dedicated his career to helping others. He was particularly proud of his innovative efforts to provide many millions of dollars of life-saving medicine to patients who otherwise couldn't afford it, and the appreciation he garnered from his efforts mentoring and training those around him. His career offered stability and security for Ken and his family, and enough free time to pursue his other passions. Those that loved him and had the good fortune to call him a friend also remember that his passion that most often occupied his thoughts was one for adventure. For it frequently occupied his time and even occasionally superseded his sense of self-preservation. Whether jumping from a plane or wandering the bottom of the sea, when Ken had free time, it was almost always spent seeking adventure, planning the next one, or recruiting a victim to join him. He was a lifelong Star Trek fan, And while the opportunities to go where no one had gone before were limited, he was always drawn to where few had gone before. The road less traveled is not often paved, and the bumpiest roads were the sources of his best stories. Some stories were told many times, but others were a beer or three away. Held at sword point on a remote Caribbean island, evacuated from a rainforest via helicopter from an airport lit by flares, sneaking across international borders in the dead of night, and protecting ancient hidden petroglyphs deep in the desert of the American Southwest. Ken was also always fascinated by space and the wonder and sense of adventure it held. He applied to the NASA astronaut program several times, even making it through the first 2 selection cuts one time. He studiously read about each of NASA's interplanetary missions, watching live as the first photos from the Mars Pathfinder and the Pluto New Horizons missions came down. As many folks here know, to have spent an evening with Ken was to have spent it outside under the stars, and the chance to ponder the heavens was only a matter of the darkness of the skies and the number of empties lining the railing. He freely admitted that he'd gone too fast via motorcycle, car, snowmobile, boat, ATV, toboggan, inner tube, and just about every other conveyance upon which he ever conveyed himself. And as a man who committed Apollo's translunar ejection velocity to memory, he would have been thrilled to know that he'd reach it. Ken's life was cut short in 2020 after a swift battle with cancer, before he could come close to realizing all of his dreams of exploration. It is an honor for his loving wife of 45 years, Ardith, and the number of family members that are here today to send him on a final adventure to the moon, where precious few have gone before, and where his memorial will be as permanent as the impact he's had on those that loved him.
The family for Liam Anad, followed by the family for Mary and Hobie Cruz.
I got surprised by this. I didn't know I was going to come up here and talk. So I'm Liam Anon's mom, Nadine, and Sanjeev, the dad. So I didn't prepare anything, so I'm going to read what I wrote in the... So, Liam Anon. He came into this world in a strange and mysterious way, one could say. Born at 2:22 p.m. on the 2nd of February, 2002. In Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. He made it into the newspaper with his picture and all. They wrote that he was a special and lucky baby. Must have came here on a specific mission with a sequence number like that. I thought, well, special was he ever? And lucky? Well, that's us. We were the lucky ones, really. On his short and brief journey here on Earth, Liam surely made every minute count, like a little force fueled by curiosity and a taste for the whys and hows of life. He was relentless and kind of drove us nuts at times, if I'm being honest here. Being small in stature and being the 4th child in a line of 5, he certainly fended for a spot and a voice in this busy household. His larger-than-the-room personality is what compensated for his size. He shared his journey here on Earth with 2 sisters and 2 brothers, Manisha, Malik, Cassie, and Andrew, and us, his parents, Sanjeev and Nadine. He lived a pretty normal suburban life in Dieppe, New Brunswick, where we lived all through his life and still are. He was a very busy guy doing many different things. He liked playing hockey, which he started late at 13. But don't be fooled, he was a mighty defense. He also liked badminton, Legos, scooters, skateboards, biking, snowboarding, building things in general. But what he mostly loved, though, was being outside, enjoying a campfire he had put together, fishing with his grandpa, riding his scooter with his friends, and riding his motorbike. He loved being out there, being out with the elements, just being free, like the wind. At school, he liked science and math. He was pretty good at it as well. He had a penchant for business also, a gene inherited from his grandma. He had in place a plan to do all of his science courses and advanced math before graduating high school. His best friend Will and himself had plans larger than life. They were to do mining out there in the space, on asteroids, to be more specific. When he would talk about that, his eyes would light up and he'd get all excited and could not spill enough words to explain all of his ideas brewing in his head. I thought it was quite extravagant and outside the box, but he had pretty much convinced me that it was possible. He could not wait for me to see that one day. Will graduated this summer, that was in 2018. He is going into astrophysics. Will carry the torch for both of them, well, at least try and carry their dreams with him. One day, I was just preparing supper. I can still picture that day. The mudroom door opens. I hear Liam drop his school bag, jacket, shoes, and I'm in a hurry because I got places to go walk and tone. He announced to me, "Mama, just want you to let you know if there's a mission to Mars and they need people to go, me and Will, we're signing up. That could also mean that we are not coming back." So I'm like, okay. He says, "I'm sorry, but that's just how it is." I said, okay. So he just walked off and I'm like, who is this guy? Like many times. I'm like, okay. He turned around and he carried on in his firm, decisive footstep with his mission. I thought to myself, who is this guy? Wow, his ideas, his courage, his strength, his energy, his curiosity, they always impress me. Fierce soul packaged in a beautiful, freckled little boy, my little boy. Through his time here, he questioned a lot of my thoughts and beliefs. He often made me doubt my convictions, in particular my religion. He always wondered how we could believe in all of that without any proofs. He told me that he rather believed in science, more in the ideas of forces and energies. I somewhat agreed with him and told him that he was free to believe what he wanted, and at the end of the day, there is only one force anyway. Liam's heart was beautifully sensitive. He wore his emotions on his sleeve. He spoke the truth, well, his truth. He was straight up with his opinions. He'd give it to you even if you didn't ask. If you needed something to be done right, you'd ask him. He took pride in his work. His energy was endless, probably renewed from his mostly being outside. He was full of life. Matter of fact, he was the life of our family. And for what I heard, he was also the life of his circle of friends. Circles in plural, that's right, because he had so many friends. No discrimination on his part, younger, older, same age, girl, boys, all ethnicity. Popular underdogs, he had more friends than most of us will ever gather in our lifetime. What always amazed me, and it made my heart so proud, is that Liam would often come up to me and say, "There's a new student at school," and he'd tell me all about him. He made some very good friends like that by just walking up to the new guy in the class or in the schoolyard and try to include them and just say, "Hey," open the way, kind of. Some of his friends still keep in touch with us and visit once in a while. I think that's Liam sending his most trusted ones to check up on his earthly tribe. It makes my heart smile and glow. I'm grateful that he made such good bonds with so many good humans. Although not long, Liam's life was filled with love, adventure, and intensity. I think he taught all of us to live life to the fullest. Don't waste time on mundane, small, insignificant things. Dream outside the box. Be your own unique self. Don't follow the mass or the herd. Speak your truth. Include all. Forgive. Love hard and unconditionally. Just love. Just be. Liam passed away and transitioned on the other side on the early morning of July 17, 2018, in a motorbike accident. He had the most beautiful day and evening here in his backyard with some friends. It was a beautiful and quiet night when his name was drawn to return home. It was so sudden and tragic for us. Time stood still for the longest time. Shattered and barely alive, we kept believing in our bond and love. It slowly fed us, and we rebuilt somehow. Different, forever altered, but mended just the same. Faith, love, and resilience is key to surviving tragedy. We do everything we can to elevate Liam's spirit, make him smile, and maybe he elbows the soul next to him and say, "That's my crazy team. They're pretty nuts, eh?" Maybe Liam went out and he came in a strange and mysterious way. His exit from this world and his entrance into it made it into the newspaper, like a star, if you ask me. For now, Liam is going to the moon, wherever we will be in this world. His siblings, his family, his friends will only need to look up at the moon and smile. And for Mars and asteroids, well, his best friends will have to figure that one out. So yeah, cheers, and that's it. I didn't know I was coming up, so thank you.
The family for Mary and Hobie Cruz, followed by the family for Micah Couch.
Hello. I'm Chris. I'm here with my sister Kelsey and my brother Kent. We are the children of Ferdinand and Mary Cruz, better known as Hobie and Mary. We have been on the journey to this moment for a long time. And no, I'm not referring to the May or December 2023 launches. And no, I'm also not referring to June 2019 when Mary passed, or May 2009 when Hobie passed away. This trip goes further back than 2007 when Mary first read about Celestis. This odyssey began on July 20th, 1969, when Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. Our parents were members of what is known as the Greatest Generation, both of them born in 1925. And despite the Depression and World War II, both went to college. As a young couple, they enjoyed subscriptions to science fiction journals. Life was filled with possibilities. Hobie became a chemist, and Mary a mathematician. Hobie worked for the Atomic Energy Commission, and Mary worked for the U.S. Department of Defense. They had a deep pride in America, and they had a very strong can-do attitude. One memory our mother shared with us was her disappointment when Russia's Sputnik 1 launched in October of 1957. She had been sure America would be first in space. The space race was something they were interested in, and it was a time of celebration when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin bounced around the moon. That was when our parents added the moon to their list of future travel destinations. In retirement, Mary and Hobie's travels took them from the Arctic Circle to Antarctica and all around the globe, touching all 7 continents. They enjoyed research expeditions where they would measure historic forts or observe volcanoes, but they never booked the trip to the moon. It seemed commercial travel to the moon would not be available in their lifetime. However, when Mary read about Celestis, the plan to go to the moon was rescued. We children were told, once we're gone, we're going to the moon. Kind of like this. For us and our families who are here with us today, this launch is a celebration of 2 lives filled with many adventures. Our parents would be proud to be assisting in the research of the Peregrine lunar lander, and to have Sir Arthur C. Clarke as a fellow adventurer is the cherry on top. I feel certain our parents would be delighted with all of your family and a doggie going to the moon with them. They're dog people. I think they will love their new home on the moon. And for the three of us, when we look up at the night sky, we'll be thinking of them. Thank you.
The family for Micah Couch, followed by the family for Robert Sellen.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shani Couch. I'm not very good at public speaking, so I'm going to do my best. I'm Micah's wife. Firstly, I'm humbled to be able to attend this memorial and launch in person with our son, Lincoln, and with the support of our family and friends. I would also like to pay respect to the rest of the families here today and their loved ones on this journey alongside my husband. It's really hard to put into words the lasting impression my husband had on the people in his life. To me, he was extraordinary, and so was the life he created for himself. Despite the challenges he may have faced, he stayed true to who he was and what he wanted. Michael was a force of energy, with an infectious smile and hugs that took the wind out of you. He was passionate, and it showed in every aspect of his life. Beyond creating a career as a professional skydiver and sponsored athlete, Micah was determined to follow the path less traveled, to live an extraordinary life filled with unique experiences and rich connections. This and more he accomplished in only half a lifetime. This flight to the moon is an incredible way to honor my husband, but I honor him every day, in the way that I live my life and how I raise our son, and by staying true to who I am and what I want. Micah wanted to go to space. He wanted to go to the moon. I guess he should have been more specific on how he got there. I will end this by sharing a few quotes from my favorite book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. Your whole body, from wingtip to wingtip, Jonathan would say other times, is nothing more than your thought itself in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thought, and you break the chains of your body too. Don't believe what your eyes are telling you. All they show you is limitation. Look within your understanding, find out what you already know, and you will see the way to fly. Overcome space, and all that we have left is here. Overcome time, and all that we have left is now. I want to give a very special thank you to our friend Latifa, who made this all possible, and a loud Micah shout out to Dave Reeder and Grandpa Jim. I love you, Micah, forever, no matter what. Thank you.
The family for Robert Sellen, followed by the family of Sheila Holmes.
Hello. My husband and best friend for 45 years, Robert Ira Sellen, died 10 years ago. Bob died after a 4-year battle with colorectal cancer. Before he passed, he decided that his final journey would include a trip aboard a vehicle to the moon. Bob and I were in college when Apollo landed on the moon, so the moon was his dream. Bob graduated from the University of Denver with a degree in engineering and was hired by Hughes Aircraft and Space Systems in El Segundo, California. He did training for Hughes U.S. and foreign military programs. He served as chairman of Manpower Personal Training for the Aerospace Industry Association, the AIA. In 1983, Bob was senior manager of customer service. He designed the life cycle on-orbit satellite support concept, Customer Operations Support Center, or COSC, for Boeing Satellite Systems, formerly Hughes Space and Communications in El Segundo. His responsibilities included 24/7 emergency and routine satellite technical and logistics support, customer training, and maintenance of on-site teams. He was the recipient of the GM Electronic Chairman's Honors Award for Customer Responsive and Support in 1997. And at the time of his retirement in 2006, he was Director of Program Services for Boeing Satellite System. He was first known to his family as Mr. Information, Please, for his detailed and in-depth answers he gave to simple questions. He consistently astounded us with his endless knowledge of how things worked, especially the wonders of space. He adapted the moniker DocSat at a time when only doctors had pagers and mobile phones. He juggled many devices like pagers and cell phones, so when beepers went off, the family would jokingly advise others, duck, because a satellite's falling from the sky. We miss your humor and knowledge and your presence at the many accomplishments of your children and grandchildren in the past 10 years since your passing. You've been a role model for both your lifelong work of your colleagues in the satellite industry and for family and friends who watched you battle cancer for 4 years. This 10-year wait to live your dream has taught us all, dream big and follow your dreams till the end. Travel safe, enjoy the ride, and take pictures. I'm joined here today by his 2 children, their spouse, and one of his 3 grandchildren, the youngest. The others could not be here, but Godspeed. Have a great trip.
The family for Sheila Holmes, followed by the family for Stephen Hargrove. Okay. The family for Stephen Hargrove. Okay. Okay. The family for Samiko Takamatsu will be next. Go ahead.
I'm Kat. Stephen was my big brother and biggest cheerleader, so just bear with me. Okay, sorry. How do you write the unwritable? How do you speak the unspeakable? How do you condense 34 and a half years of life into a few paragraphs? You don't, but you take a shot of vodka and try to do the undoable. Things come in threes, they say. The 3 little pigs, the 3 branches of government, the 3 amigos, the 3 musketeers, the 3 stooges, the Hargrove children. I never thought I'd quote Timon from The Lion King in a eulogy of sorts, but our trio's down to 2. Stephen Houseman Hargrove, Jr. of Dallas, passed away unexpectedly at the age of 34. He was the eldest son of Steve and Jenny Hargrove, big brother to Kat and Trevor, brother-in-law to my now husband, 2023 edition of Austin Leary, brother-in-law to Jody, uncle to Adam, nephew to Sandy, great-nephew to Peggy, and rescuer of his dog, Sweet Pea. He was preceded in death by grandparents Ige and Sally Young, and Ray and Johnny Hargrove, and his sweet puppo, Maddie Ray. So thank you to the dog that is coming on this trip, because Stephen will definitely be very happy. Stephen was born on March 8th, 1986. From an early age, he was a star, an all-star. His roller hockey team won national titles several times under his beloved coach, Bart Skinner. His love for hockey increased tenfold, and he found himself on several travel ice teams, including Alliance AAA, coached by Cosmo Clark, where Stephen's trophy closet expanded. In his junior year of high school at Bishop Lynch, Stephen led his hockey league in both scored points and penalty minutes for several months straight, which says all you need to know about his character. He loved hard, but he fought hard. A total empath, he wanted to do well, but most importantly, he wanted to ensure that others were treated well. Basically, I'll score to help the other team, but if you mess with one of my own, I'm coming after you. And he meant it. He reminded us of the Dallas Stars hockey great Darian Hatcher, which is a little ironic given that they both shared the jersey number 2. After graduating from Bishop Lynch, Stephen attended Texas Christian University with my little brother and I, and bled purple. Stephen was a huge fan of then head coach Gary Patterson, and it tickled Stephen that he had the opportunity to speak with him on the phone just a few months before the 2020 football season. Prior to his death, Stephen was enrolled in an advanced, top-drawer electrical training program where he excelled with straight A's and had finally found his passion. He adored his coworkers, speaking of them often and fondly, and took pride in working for the family business. It was there he grew quite close to his family, whether blood-related or not. Sorry. Stephen was promoted to Uncle Stephen 4 years before his death, and his love for hockey spilled over to my son, his nephew, Adam. Stephen purchased Adam his first goalie set. When Adam was little, he used to refer to himself as Baby Ben Bishop, a former goalie for the Dallas Stars, and the two would practice for hours on end, playing mini-stick and dumpster hockey. We take solace in knowing how much he loved his nephew and how much his nephew adored him. Stephen was actually the first person to feed Adam in the neonatal intensive care unit, something he loved to brag about to others. In April 2019, Stephen served as best man in his little brother Trevor's wedding. Stephen beamed with joy and felt truly honored at the privilege. I promise I'm almost done. Stephen truly loved to be loved and to love others. He was always there to lend a helping hand. Whether he aided financially or emotionally, he was the one person you could count on to come to the rescue with his kind spirit. We are all better people for knowing such a loving soul in a world for... Oh, okay, I wrote this during COVID, so hopefully some of y'all get the reference. This is from Joe Exotic, but I said, in a world full of Carol Baskins, be a Stephen. Stephen's passion for space started at a young age. His childhood bedroom was hand-painted with space shuttles in the solar system. His interest was further propelled by his obsession with Star Wars and adoration for Yoda. Always questioning societal norms and serving as a proponent of conspiracy theories, Stephen was fully convinced we never landed on the moon. He would talk about it a lot. So, the joke's on him. Stephen, we love you quite literally to the moon. Mom, Dad, Kat, Austin, Adam, Trevor, Jody, Aunt Sandy, Aunt Peg, and your puppo, Sweet Pea.
You think his little sister loves him? He denied we ever landed on the moon. We get the last laugh.
The family for Sumiko Takamatsu.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Akihiro, participant to Sumiko Takamatsu-san. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk. She passed away in January 8, 2019. My mother was born in Sakaimachi in Japan on March 1932. She spent her childhood during war era, and after she became a librarian. So in later years, she taught me to reading books, and she provided me some books about space, mechanics, and aerospace. She took me to many aerospace events, Space Expo, Space Shuttle exhibition in Tokyo, and many air shows. So I became inspired to pursue my current work in aerospace job. My mother, Sumiko-san, always did handicrafts, sewing, cooking, fine works, and so on. She was a diligent and a smart woman who would continue to work as a housekeeper and a babysitter even while she was older. She gave me all things. She always supported me. I really love and respect her. I would like to express my deepest thanks to her in Japanese. 母ちゃんのこと大好きだからよ、またね。Which means, I love you, Mom. See you later. Thank you for flying with us. Thank you.
I'd like to pause the family stories for a moment and pay tribute to the participants of the Tranquility flight. I'm going to call Mark B. Lee and John Dodonna up to the stage to read the names.
Before we begin, if any of the names we share with you today are awkwardly pronounced, we ask for your grace and your forgiveness. We hold all our participants and their families in the highest esteem. Dr. Dick Hideki Ito, Roger Kruger, Marjorie Kruger, Ferdinand Cruz, Mary Cruz, Roxana Marie Lake, William Lambert, Audrey June Langford, Christopher S. McCammon, Raymond W. Merling, Damon Paul Nelson, Marvin Nishizaki, Christopher Michael Olenek, James R. Page, Richard Lynn Peterson, Irma Pierce, Thomas Pierce, Joseph Rigo, Aina Rigo, Gregory Robert Rhine, Dr. William A. Rentz, Jean Roddenberry, Majel Roddenberry, Hayes Aiko Rufo, Stephen Livingston Schneider, Karl-Heinz Seitz, Irmgard Seitz, Robert Selin, Dr. Mohammed Shafiei, Newt Soros, Sumiko Takamatsu, Anthony Hollis Taylor, Rodney H. Trotter, Moretta West, Helen Woodcock.
Arthur Abraham, Gary Atkinson, Joseph Alpert, Peter the Great Alpert, K-9 participant, Liam Anand, Christopher Anderson, Vupo Venugopal Barachi, Kenneth Christopher Bodine, Winford Uva Bolke, Akeem Brock, Mayo Broussard, Susan Buttram, Stephen Richard Chronister, Arthur C. Clark, Alan Clive, Merrill Dean Cleary, Matthew Edward Coles, Mikau Couch, Louis DeTota, Zachary Thomas Dickinson, Gregory John Donnelly, Chadley Barton DeRosa, Indica Noodle Fabian, K9 participant, Brian Eric Ford, Otis Frederick Forsythe, Robert William Gable, Mikel Hernandez Gilbert, Henry Gomez Reyes, Wynn Welch Grande, Lawrence Wayne Hamilton, Stephen Hausman Hargrove Jr., Timothy Lel Heaps, Kay Ann Hegestad, Kenneth Hogan, Sheila Holmes. Okay.
Our cellist is Lily Elliott. She'll now play The Blue Danube by Johann Strauss. Very good, thank you. Well done. I'd like to bring the family of Stephen Livingston Snyder to come forward and kick our family stories back off again. And they will be followed by the family of Greg Ryan.
Hello, I'm Christine Schneider, and I was married to Stephen Schneider for 35 years. Stephen was the eldest child of the late Jean and Marty Schneider. He was born on February 26, 1953 in Washington, D.C., the eldest brother of Susan, Mary Ann, Marty, and Fred. He's the father of Jillian, married to Mike, and the grandfather of Corey. By trade, Stephen is a real estate developer in the Ballston corridor of Arlington, Virginia, but his passion was in helping people as a volunteer fireman and EMT. He achieved the rank of captain at Station 2, our neighborhood fire and rescue. Space was his religion, and Isaac Asimov, Carl Sagan, and Stephen Hawking were his holy trinity. Stephen's senior superlative in Ascension Academy was talks the least but says the most. He attended Virginia Tech, where he studied computer sciences, physics, astronomy, cosmology, and math. He was a man of few words and a vivid imagination. He loved and was fascinated by anything scientific, technical, or theoretical. He said things like, energy cannot be created or destroyed, so that means that love, true love, never dies. And extinction happens when people cannot adjust to situations life throws at them. Be flexible. He followed the Heavens Above app, and he would drag us outside into the heat or cold, even during the best part of a movie, if something was scheduled to go over our house. He would know exactly where to look, and he would point out the faintest reflection of light as it moved across the sky. Some of Stephen's ashes were launched on the Heritage satellite, which orbits the Earth 3 times a day. It would be great if he were still around to drag us outside and tell us when to look up. Stephen and his dad attended the liftoff of Apollo 11 as special guest of then FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover when he was 16 years old. No doubt this historic and amazing experience cemented his lifelong fascination and love of space, space exploration, and physics. The funny thing is, when we were dating, he told me this story, and I had no understanding of the scientific and historical significance of this mission, and I said to him, that must have been really loud. He also had to teach me the difference between Star Trek and Star Wars, and yet he loved me enough to marry me anyway. Stephen loved to read. When he was amused, his eyes would twinkle, and then he'd get a little crinkle across the bridge of his nose, and then he'd break out into a full laugh. He was charming, handsome, intelligent, kind, and funny. He inspired calmness and trust in people by being sensitive, kind, and caring. To me, Stephen was Superman, Spider-Man, and every superhero who ever wore a cape. It was hard to choose a slogan to put under Stephen's picture. He sometimes borrowed Ralph Cramden's words, "To the moon, Alice, to the moon," and he loved JFK's exciting challenge, "We choose the moon." I kind of liked "I love you to the moon and back" because it was true, but finally, Carl Sagan's words seemed the most respectful and appropriate. The sky calls to us, for Stephen was always looking up and looking forward. Stephen would have thanked the Celestis team for their leadership in providing commercial space burials, and especially Christiana and Faith for their care of us, and Charlie Schaefer for his vision. He would have also liked to have thanked, ULA. And what is so special to me about this Celestis event is that everything is cared for and planned so specifically that it feels more like a family reunion than a memorial service. And listening to stories from everybody, I see little pieces of Stephen and know that there's a connection between all of our hearts tonight. So anyway, this is his third liftoff, and because it's the maiden voyage of the Vulcan rocket, it's going to be another weekend of history being made for Stephen. Those of us who love Stephen will find comfort in knowing that part of Stephen is on the lunar surface. Knowing what I know now about Enterprise, part of me would think that Stephen would be really bummed out that he wasn't on the Enterprise with all of his heroes, but he'll be happy on the moon. And when we see the moon at night in all of its phases, will remind us of our special connection with him. Although he is physically gone from us for 6 years, his memory will be rekindled every time we search the night sky or see someone performing a random kindness. Our grandchild, Corey Rogers, honored Stephen by reading this at the celebration of his life 6 years ago. It is even more true today. Good friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know they are always there. Thank you.
The family for Greg Ryan, followed by the family for Anthony Taylor.
I'm Mark Hazelbaker. I'm an attorney, and I was the trustee and then ultimately the friend of Gregory Ryan. Greg Ryan, through this flight, will attain a dream that he had desired all his life, but which unfortunately was denied him by misfortune. From his earliest days, Greg wanted to fly. He wanted to join NASA. He was serious about that, and he did fly. He got his private pilot license when he was 16. He flew a lot in high school. He went off from Stoughton, Wisconsin to Purdue University and earned a bachelor's degree in aeronautical engineering in 4 years, during which time he also managed to get his commercial pilot's license, his instrument ratings, and his instructor ratings. So it's no surprise that with all that under his belt, he was hired by ComAir to be a pilot. And he worked very intensely at that. He was working his way up the seniority list toward his goal of becoming an airline pilot. And I think secretly he told me he always had hoped that somehow he could have become an astronaut somewhere along the line. Well, that was not to be, unfortunately, because although he was very successful and very competent as a pilot and did so for 7 years, in 1990, while he was flying the plane, he had a manic episode. He wound up being grounded and suffered from bipolar disorder for the rest of his life. All of his dreams were grounded. What is truly sad, though, is that he lost not just his medical certificate and his ability to fly, but he wound up being really estranged and cut off from what he loved so much, aviation. A great talent, a brilliant mind, an enormous amount of energy wound up being put to waste. And he spent the rest of his life, the remaining 29 years, struggling with bipolar disorder. In 2004, I came into his life as his lawyer. He had managed to get into a few misadventures and some misunderstandings with the law. Nothing too serious, but enough that I met him at Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, Wisconsin, the state's hospital for detaining people. I got to know him quite well. He was an extraordinary man. He was brilliant. He knew many things. He had many ideas, many of which were very serious. He was not by any means a frivolous person, although he sometimes pursued fantastic ideas because of his disorder. It's really sad because he could have done a lot. And as a result of what was at that time, and I think unfortunately still remains, a fear of emotional illness and mental illness in the aviation world, he was very much excised from any opportunity to make a contribution. Instead, he wound up unable to do anything except park and sit in parking lots near runways, staying there long enough watching planes that he would get routinely interrogated by police saying, well, what are you doing here? And of course, this was mostly after 9/11 that happened. Anyway, he really longed for the chance to regain what he had missed. He held on to his dreams. He had several cars, all of which had license plates that had, in one form or another, the word NASA in them. He just was very strongly, believed very strongly in the space program. For all that he went through, he really remained fundamentally a decent human being. And I hope that if any of you have any involvement in aviation, that you will be part of efforts that are now underway to try to provide more compassionate, open, and forthright opportunities for pilots who are suffering from emotional illnesses to talk about them, to come forward, to share those things so that they can get treatment without worrying that what happened to Greg would happen to them. Everybody has their problems and everybody has their flaws. And if Greg's life stands as a lesson for anything, it's that if you have the courage to continue, which he did, you can overcome just about anything, and you can try to maintain some quality of life even in the midst of the wildest and most horrible suffering. Greg would be thrilled, very much thrilled, by the chance to be on the lunch on Monday, although I think he would have preferred to have been experienced it alive in a capsule. But he would certainly nonetheless appreciate the chance to go to the moon ahead of a lot of other people. Hopefully, I might add, hundreds of thousands of other people in the coming years. He would have very strongly believed in the idea of private enterprise opening the horizons, broadening horizons that have been opened by the efforts of government-funded people in advance. He would very much have appreciated the chance to push back the frontiers of science. And above all, he would have appreciated the comradeship that we are hearing today and seeing among others. Friends, I brought with me some cards that I made to memorialize Greg. If you haven't gotten one from me, please get one. When he died, for his memorial service, I had some pilot wings made with his name on them, and I'm wearing one today. I'd love it if you would take one from me and wear it in his memory. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
The family for Anthony Taylor, followed by the family for Greg Donnelly.
Thank you very much. These are all remarkable stories. And my husband, Tony Taylor, is no less remarkable and extraordinary. As a child, he dreamed of going into space and the stars, and he lived his entire life in that direction. He went to the United States Air Force Academy, became a fighter pilot subsequently, flew in Vietnam, Phantom F-4Cs. After the Air Force, he went to the University of Arizona, got a master's degree in physics, became an engineer at the China Lake Naval Weapons Center, where he was for several years. And then he moved to Pasadena area to work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL. He started in the Deep Space Network, and that was where he was working when I met him. We actually met through a dating service before internet. And him working at JPL was a real bonus for me. In fact, shortly after we met, we both applied to be mission specialists in the shuttle program. They didn't need anybody with my profession in special education, but he got as far as having his references contacted on 3 different occasions. After the Deep Space Network, and this is with the big radio telescopes, he moved into spacecraft navigation at JPL, became the chief navigator for Voyager 2, Cassini, Galileo, and then after retiring from JPL, he moved to Kinetics, based in Tempe, Arizona, and was the chief navigator for Messenger that went to Mercury, and New Horizons that went to Pluto. And as far as I know, he still is the only person on Earth to hold the record of navigating spacecraft to all of the planets of the solar system and Pluto. In addition, poor Pluto. In addition, he was an award-winning author of the novels Counters and The Darkest Side of Saturn. The Darkest Side of Saturn won the 2015 Arizona Book of the Year Award. He was a great fan of Star Trek. And fortunately, when he was still sick, but before he passed away, he learned that asteroid Anthony Taylor was named for him. In the 40 years we were together, I only saw him cry twice. Once when Spock died, and the second time when he learned that an asteroid was being named for him. He leaves behind a sister, Lynn, me, of course, and his 2 daughters, our 2 daughters, Louisa and Chelsea, and his grandsons, JJ and Harris. His last wish was for his ashes to go to the moon, and this was before I knew it was even a possibility. And I have a friend who is also a friend of Charlie Chafer, who told me about Celestis, And I'm very thankful that he did. I want to thank Celestis and for making this happen. Tony virtually visited space and all of the planets, but now going to the moon will become a reality for him. Thank you.
The family for Greg Donnelly, followed by the family for Candace Evans.
Hi, my name is Julie, and I'm here to tell you a little about my late husband, Gregory John Donnelly. I really dislike saying the term my late husband because Greg was never late. He was always on time. A couple of his favorite things, other than me, were watches, clocks, and fountain pens. He was respectful of everything that had to do with time. He was a man of his word, verbal and written. He was precise and to the point in a gentle way. At one time in his career, Greg was a sector president at Northrop Grumman. He formed a joint venture and brought both Cape Kennedy and Canaveral together as one job for our government. He and his team ran that job for several years, and Greg really enjoyed that. Greg and I were able to watch one of SpaceX's launches to the International Space Station before he died from ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease. Before he died, I told him that I was going to get some of his ashes into space. He looked at me with astonished eyes and tears of happiness. I didn't know how I was going to do that at the time, but here we are today at this beautiful celebration of life with the Celestis family. Greg transected the heavens in supporting NASA and protecting our country through the National Nuclear Security Administration and the National Security Administration. I only know by the badges he had to enter those various governmental agencies. What he did for our country will forever go unsaid. He died with state secrets. From directing White House communications to inspiring small businesses to support and defend America, Greg envisioned the heavens and the blue orb that orbits the sun. I always admired that man from afar as he led through a quiet strength of leadership. I will love him until my time comes, then we will be joined in heaven and on the moon when I send our combined DNA on the upcoming Celestis Destiny flight in 2024. But today is all about Greg. What he has done in life, he continues by DNA and legacy to do as a silent centurion for all of eternity. Greg, I thank you for your love, service, and dedication, not only to me, but for our country. Stay sharp, fly safe, my love. Here's looking at you, kid.
The family for Candace Evans, followed by the family for Charlotte Cole.
It's amazing the people and their accomplishments that are all up here and just inspiring. My story is a little bit different, I think, to some degree. I'm not a family member of Candace. Met her on a beach in Jamaica. She was picking up trash out of the ocean. Everybody else was throwing it in. Had to talk to that lady and say, we walked down the beach. I found out she was an aerospace engineer, female. It's like, she became the love of my life. I lived in Wisconsin. She lived in Florida. I flew down to see her one New Year, the first New Year's after a few weeks, and she took me to Cape Canaveral to watch a launch from the Saturn space station or area, and Atlas V. When it took off, I was just stunned. And when that sound came and hit me, it just shook my guts. And she said, I helped build that. She actually worked on the fuel injection systems of that rocket, and she just loved that whole thing. And as I got to know her and her history, I found out that she had been married to a fellow, had 3 kids. He got killed in a motorcycle accident. And She, with help from friends, put herself through school at Embry-Riddle, aeronautical school. She wanted to be a test pilot, but she thought that was too risky because she had 3 kids. So she became a female aerospace engineer. And then worked on the Atlas V and supposedly the SR-71. The things she overcome I can't express, but she always had a concern for her kids and her grandkids, and she was, the only thing she was afraid of, and I have to say, is like, she had, excuse me, but more balls than anybody I ever knew. She wanted to go to Mars, and if it was one way, that's fine with her. But she didn't live long enough to do that. She needed a liver. She was on a transplant list for 15 years, and she finally got a call to come in for a liver, but she was visiting me on Valentine's Day in Wisconsin. Couldn't get her to Miami, but she just wanted to be remembered, and this is when I saw this with the Celestis program, it just blew me away, just how spectacular way for her not to ever be forgotten, and for her kids and her grandkids and everybody in the future. She wanted to go to Mars, but best I can do, this is as far as it goes. She's going to be on the Enterprise in deep space. Love you, hon.
The family for Charlotte Cole, followed by the family for Mark Hopkins. Okay. The family for Mark Hopkins.
Hello, my name is Gary Pierce Barnhart. I stand before you in various capacities, including serving as the president of the Space Development Foundation, the director of strategic relationships for the National Space Society, and representative of the Hopkins family. All the involved organizations in Mark's family wish to convey their profound thanks to Charlie Schaefer and Celestis Inc. for the opportunity to recognize the role of Mark Hopkins in the evolution of the space movement by participation in the Enterprise mission. I've known Mark since the late 1970s through our work with the L5 Society, the Space Studies Institute, and the National Space Society. In NSS, he served as the senior operating officer when I was the chief executive officer, and I worked for him as the executive director when he became the NSS CEO. I spoke with Mark so often that my wife and our daughters considered him part of our extended family. Mark was a dear friend, colleague, and profoundly opinionated ideator dedicated to envisioning and enabling the space movement. In celebration of his life and recognition of his unfailing commitment to space advocacy, his friends, colleagues, and family lent their support to the Space Development Foundation's campaign to include his remains on the Celestis Enterprise Space Memorial Flight. Mark earned a BS in economics from the California Institute of Technology, an MA in economics from Harvard, and was a former RAND Corporation economist. He has written numerous publications concerning space economics and was responsible for most of the early studies of economic studies of space settlements, including the economic study and then infamous NASA publication SP413, Space Settlements, the Design Study. During the late 60s and early 70s, Mark studied social movements and recognized the need for a movement that supported the space program. He later coined the term space movement, which is in widespread use today. His history of involvement has been so extensive that he has even been called at times the father of the space movement. He became formally active in 1972 when he co-founded and later served as the president of the Harvard-Radcliffe Committee for a Space Economy, dedicated to the goal of large-scale economic development of space. In 1975, Mark strongly encouraged the founding of the L5 Society as the nucleus of a new social movement and joined the L5 Board of Directors at the Society's first election. Mark first proposed the concept of the National Space Society, which was ended up as a merger between the L5 Society and the National Space Institute, brought forth by Wernher von Braun. And he was one of the chief negotiators in negotiating that merger to create the National Space Society in 1987. He served continuously as an officer and member of the board of directors of L5 and then NSS for over 30 years, 24 of those as an officer. Mark was the chief executive officer emeritus for the National Space Society until his passing in May of 2023. Mark built and led the political efforts of L5 and NSS for 18 years through 1997. He founded Space Cause and Space PAC and served as the president of Space Cause for a decade and chairman of Space PAC for 16 years. He played a significant role in the successful defeat of the Anti-Private Enterprise Moon Treaty. Mark was particularly concerned with developing an optimal strategy for the space movement and the question of what is the best way to drive humanity into space. That question of why space is of no small measure. In these challenging times, the importance of the investment we make in providing for the future, including space exploration and development, is not to be underestimated. It serves as a foundation for hope. It serves as an affirmation that we, as a resilient society, will not be deterred from lending our efforts to forging a brighter tomorrow. Mark is survived by his wife Miriam, daughter Michaela, her husband Stephen Jacks, and son Martin, and wife Karen Bagley. Mark will be greatly missed by his beloved grandsons, Jude, Wade, Reese, and Quinn Hopkins, and Dylan and Camden Jacks. Mark's absence leaves a void in many of our lives, but the spirit of his life's work will endure. Space is our future. Thank you.
Okay, Tranquility Flight families, that will conclude this portion and the entirety of our memorial service today.